The great hall of the Dominion Council was cold and silent. Tall crystal walls reached up toward the dark ceiling like frozen flames. Commander Vexithara stood in the center of the room. His forearms were crossed over his chest. His amber eyes glowed in the dim light. Around him sat the 12 members of the High Council. Each one was different. Some had wings that folded behind their backs. Others had skin that looked like metal. A few had no eyes at all but still seemed to watch everything. They were the rulers of 1,000 worlds. They decided who lived and who died across the galaxy. Today they would decide the fate of Earth. Commander Vexithara, spoke Council Leader Morthek. His voice was deep and cold like winter wind. You have studied the humans for many cycles. Tell us what you have learned. Vexithara stepped forward. His heavy boots made no sound on the smooth floor. He had been a soldier for over 300 years. He had destroyed 17 civilizations. He had never failed a mission. The humans are dangerous, he began. His voice was steady and sure. They spread across their galaxy like a disease. They build weapons instead of surrendering. They refuse to bow to our power. The council members shifted in their seats. Some nodded. Others made soft clicking sounds with their throats. In just 200 of their years, Vexithara continued, they went from simple farmers to space travelers. They now have colonies on 43 worlds. Their military grows stronger each day. If we do not stop them now, they will become a real threat to the Dominion. Council Leader Morthek leaned forward. What do you suggest, Commander? Vexithara's eyes grew brighter. Complete destruction. We must destroy their homeworld. We must destroy every human colony. We must make sure no human survives to remember their species. The hall was quiet for a long moment. Then Council Member Yexvara spoke. She had blue skin and silver hair that moved like water. The humans have done nothing directly against us. They have not attacked our ships. They have not invaded our worlds. They do not need to attack us, Vexithara replied. Their very existence is a challenge to our authority. Other species watch them. They see humans refuse to submit. Soon other species will think they can do the same. Another council member stood up. This one was tall and thin with gray skin. Commander, destroying an entire species is a serious matter. Are you certain this is necessary? Vexithara looked at each council member in turn. I have spent 5 years studying the humans. I have watched their wars. I have seen how they fight. They do not know when to surrender. They do not understand that some enemies cannot be beaten. This makes them very dangerous. He paused and took a deep breath. But it is not just their fighting that worries me. It is their hope. Humans never give up. Even when everything looks hopeless, they keep trying. This kind of thinking spreads. Other species might start to believe they can resist us too. Council Leader Morthek stood up slowly. He was very old and very wise. He had ruled the Dominion for over 1,000 years. Commander Vexithara, if we give you this mission, can you promise us complete success? Vexithara straightened his shoulders. His forearms spread wide. I swear by the ancient codes of our people. I swear by the honor of my clan. I swear by my own life. Earth will burn. Every human city will become ash. Their children will never grow up. Their stories will never be told. When I am finished, it will be as if humans never existed. The council members looked at each other. Some spoke in whispers. Others made hand signals that meant different things in their languages. Finally, Council Leader Morthek spoke again. Very well, Commander. We grant you command of Fleet Battle Group 7. 200 warships, 50,000 soldiers. You have everything you need to complete this task. How long do we give the humans to surrender? Asked Vexithara. No surrender, replied Morthek. No mercy. No prisoners. This is not a conquest. This is an execution. Vexithara bowed low. I understand. When do I begin? Immediately. Your fleet is already prepared. The humans will have 72 of their hours to prepare. For death. Use this time to position your ships. When the time is up, begin the bombardment. As Vexthara turned to leave, Council Member HFY called out to him. "Commander, remember that history will judge us for this action. Make sure it is quick. Make sure they do not suffer too long." Vexthara stopped but did not turn around. "Suffering is part of the lesson, Council Member. Other species must see what happens when they defy the Dominion. Fear is a powerful teacher." He walked out of the Great Hall. His heavy footsteps echoed in the empty corridors. Behind him, the council members sat in silence. They had just ordered the death of 8 billion souls. Far across the galaxy, on a small blue planet called Earth, people went about their normal lives. In Seoul, President Kim Dae-ho was having breakfast with his family. In Tokyo, children were playing in the park. In New York, people hurried to work through busy streets. They did not know that death was coming for them from the stars. In a small apartment in Busan, 7-year-old Han Ji-ho sat on the floor with his coloring book. His grandmother, Park Sun-hee, was making lunch in the kitchen. The smell of rice and vegetables filled the air. Ji-ho was working on a picture of his family. He had already colored his mother, Kim Yoon-bi, with brown hair and a yellow dress. His father, Han Dong-min, wore a blue shirt and black pants. His baby sister, Han Nari, was just a small circle with a smiling face. Now he was working on the sky. He picked up his blue crayon and began to fill in the space above his family. The crayon was old and worn down from much use, but it still made beautiful blue marks on the paper. "Grandmother," Ji-ho called out, "what color should I make the sun?" "Yellow, little one," Park Sun-hee replied from the kitchen. "The sun is always yellow." Ji-ho reached for his yellow crayon. As he did, he looked out the window at the real sky. It was clear and blue and peaceful. White clouds drifted slowly across it like cotton balls. He had no idea that in 72 hours that same sky would be filled with alien warships ready to destroy everything he loved. The promise had been made. The fleet was moving, and Earth's last peaceful day was almost over. The skies above Earth grew dark as Commander Vexthara's fleet arrived. 200 massive ships blocked out the sun like giant metal clouds. Their hulls were black as night and covered with weapons that glowed red in the darkness. On Earth, sirens began to wail in every city. President Kim Dae-ho stood in his underground command center in Seoul. Around him, generals and scientists worked at computer screens. The room was filled with flashing lights and urgent voices. "Sir, we count 200 enemy vessels," reported General Park Min-soo. His face was pale with worry. "They have positioned themselves around our planet like a cage." Dr. Lee Soo-jin looked up from her computer. "Mr. President, our weapons are no match for their technology. Our missiles would barely scratch their ships." President Kim Dae-ho stared at the big screen that showed the alien fleet. Each ship was the size of a small city. "How long do we have?" "Based on their message, less than 70 hours, General Park replied. "They want us to evacuate our cities. But sir, we cannot move 8 billion people in such a short time." The president closed his eyes. "Do what you can. Focus on the children first. Get as many as possible to the underground shelters." Across the world, people ran through the streets, carrying their most precious belongings. Cars packed the highways leading away from major cities. Parents held their children close as they hurried toward safety, but not everyone could run. Some were too old, some were too sick, some simply had nowhere to go. In Busan, most people had already left the city. The streets were empty except for a few stray dogs and scattered papers blowing in the wind. Tall buildings stood like silent giants watching over the abandoned neighborhoods. Commander Vexthara's flagship slowly descended through the clouds. It was a massive vessel shaped like a giant spear. Its hull was covered in symbols that glowed with purple light. As it came closer to the ground, the air itself seemed to shake with fear. The ship landed in an empty field outside the city. 12 smaller ships landed around it in a perfect circle. Steam rose from their engines as they cooled down after the long journey through space. A door opened in the side of the flagship. A metal ramp extended to the ground. Heavy footsteps echoed from inside the ship as Commander Vexthara emerged. He was a terrifying sight. 9 feet tall with 4 muscular arms and skin that looked like black armor. His amber eyes glowed like fire in the darkness. Behind him walked his second in command, Sub-Commander Kixmalar. She was smaller but equally frightening with silver skin and 6 thin arms. "Begin scanning the area," Vexithara ordered his soldiers. "I want to know about every human within 10 miles of this position." "Yes, Commander," replied Sub-Commander Kixmalar. She held up a small device that beeped and flashed as it searched for life signs. "Most humans have fled, but I detect some remaining signatures in the residential area." Vexithara nodded. "Good. We will make examples of those who stayed behind. Other species must see what happens to those who defy the Dominion." They walked through the empty streets of Busan. Their heavy boots made loud sounds on the pavement. Streetlights flickered above them as if the city itself was afraid. The alien soldiers spread out to search the buildings. Most were empty. Abandoned cars sat in driveways. Windows were dark and silent. It was like walking through a ghost town. But as they moved deeper into the residential area, Vexithara heard something that made him stop. It was a soft sound carried on the wind, a child's voice singing a gentle song. "Commander," Sub-Commander Kixmalar said, "should we investigate that sound?" Vexithara held up one of his 4 hands for silence. The singing was coming from a small apartment building. It was a simple melody, but somehow beautiful in the emptiness of the abandoned city. "Stay here," Vexithara commanded. "I will investigate, alone." "Sir, protocol requires—" "I said stay here." Sub-Commander Kixmalar watched with confusion as her commander walked toward the building. In all their years of service together, she had never seen him act this way. Vexithara always followed orders exactly. He never took unnecessary risks. The alien commander climbed the stairs of the apartment building. The singing grew louder as he reached the 3rd floor. The voice was high and sweet like a small bird. It made something stir in his chest that he had not felt for many years. The song was coming from behind a door marked with the number 304. Vexithara raised one of his massive hands and gently pushed the door open. It was not locked. Inside the small apartment, he saw a scene that stopped him completely. A human child sat cross-legged on the floor. The boy was very young, maybe 7 years old. He had black hair and was wearing a red shirt and blue pants. In front of him was a coloring book filled with bright pictures. The child was completely absorbed in his work. He held a crayon in his small hand and carefully colored inside the lines of a drawing. His tongue stuck out slightly as he concentrated on making the colors perfect. Around him were scattered more crayons, picture books, and toys. On a small table nearby was a half-finished puzzle showing a picture of a rainbow. The child looked up when he sensed someone watching him. His dark eyes met the glowing amber eyes of the alien commander. For a moment, neither moved. Vexithara expected the child to scream. He expected fear and terror. He expected the boy to run away crying for his parents. Instead, the child smiled. "Hello," said Han Jiho in his soft voice. "Are you here to color with me?" Vexithara stood frozen in the doorway. In all his 300 years of life, in all his battles across the galaxy, he had never experienced anything like this moment. The child showed no fear, no anger, no hatred, only curiosity and an innocent invitation to join in something beautiful. "My name is Jiho," the boy continued, holding up his coloring book. "I'm making a picture of my family. Do you want to see?" The alien commander who had promised to destroy this world found himself unable to speak. The simple trust in the child's eyes was more powerful than any weapon he had ever faced. Outside, Sub-Commander Kixmalar waited for orders. The other ships waited in orbit for the signal to begin the bombardment. But inside apartment 304, the fate of 2 species hung in the balance of a child's innocent question. Commander Vexithara stood in the doorway like a giant statue. His 4 arms hung at his sides. His amber eyes stared at the small human child who had just invited him to color. Han Jiho tilted his head to one side like a curious puppy. "Are you okay, mister? You look very tall. And you have 4 arms. That is so cool. I bet you can color 4 pictures at the same time." The alien commander had trained for this mission for 5 years. He had studied human behavior. He had learned about their weapons and their cities. But no one had prepared him for this moment. In all his research, the humans were described as violent creatures. They fought wars against each other. They built weapons that could destroy entire planets. They were supposed to be aggressive and dangerous, but this small human showed no aggression at all. Instead, he patted the floor next to him with his tiny hand. "Come sit down," Jiho said with a bright smile. "The floor is very comfortable. My grandmother says sitting on the floor is good for thinking." Vexithara looked around the small apartment. It was simple but clean. Pictures of the boy's family hung on the walls. There were photos of a man and woman holding the child. In one picture, they were all laughing at what looked like a birthday party. "Where is your family?" Vexithara asked. His voice was deep and rough from years of giving orders to soldiers. Jiho looked sad for just a moment. "My mama and papa had to go help other people evacuate. They wanted to take me too, but grandmother got sick. Her heart started hurting really bad. The doctors had to take her to the hospital in a big ambulance." The child picked up a green crayon and continued coloring what looked like grass in his picture. "They said they would come back for me as soon as grandmother gets better. They promised. And my family always keeps promises." Vexithara felt something strange in his chest. It was a feeling he had not experienced in many decades. The humans had left this child behind, but not because they did not care. They had to make an impossible choice between saving many people and staying with one. "Are you not afraid?" the commander asked, taking a small step into the room. Jiho looked up with innocent eyes. "Afraid of what?" "Of me. I am an alien. I am very different from you." The boy shrugged his small shoulders. "My teacher, Miss Yang, says different is just another word for interesting. You are definitely interesting. I have never met anyone with 4 arms before." Vexithara moved closer. His heavy footsteps made the floor creak, but Jiho did not seem worried. The child was focused on his coloring book again. "What are you drawing?" the commander asked. "My family," Jiho replied proudly. He held up the book so Vexithara could see. "This is my mama, Kim Yoonbi. She is a nurse and helps sick people feel better. This is my papa, Han Dong-min. He fixes cars and always has dirty hands, but he gives the best hugs." The drawing was simple but made with care. The figures were just basic shapes, but somehow they looked happy. The child had used bright colors and drawn big smiles on every face. "This little one is my baby sister, Han-nari," Jiho continued, pointing to a small circle with dots for eyes. "She cannot walk yet, but she laughs at everything. And this is me." The boy pointed to a stick figure wearing what looked like the same red shirt he had on now. Next to all the family members, he had drawn a house with a triangle roof and square windows. Above everything was a bright yellow sun and blue sky. "It is a good drawing," Vexithara said quietly. "Thank you." Jiho beamed with pride. "Do you have a family?" The question hit Vexithara like a punch to the stomach. Family. He had not thought about his birth siblings in over 200 years. The Dominion military separated young ones from their families very early. They said family made soldiers weak. I had brothers and sisters once," he admitted. "What happened to them?" "We were separated when we joined the military." "Soldiers are not supposed to think about family." Jiho frowned. "That sounds very sad. Family is the most important thing. My mama says family means taking care of each other no matter what happens." The child suddenly jumped to his feet. He walked over to a small box filled with crayons and art supplies. After digging around for a moment, he pulled out a red crayon that was worn down to about half its original size. "Here," Jiho said, walking back to Vexithara and holding out the crayon. "This is for you." Vexithara stared at the small red stick. "What is it for?" "For drawing, silly. You said you had a family once. Maybe if you draw them, you will remember the happy times." The alien commander looked down at his massive hands. Each one was the size of the child's entire head. "I do not think I can hold something so small." "Sure you can," Jiho said with confidence. Here, let me show you. The brave little boy took one of Vexithara's huge hands in both of his tiny ones. Gently, he positioned the red crayon between the commander's thumb and first finger. See? You just hold it lightly, like you are holding a baby bird. Too tight and you will break it. Too loose and it will fall. Vexithara stared at the crayon in his hand. It looked impossibly small and fragile, but somehow he managed to hold it without crushing it. Now you try, Jiho said, sitting back down and opening his coloring book to a fresh page. Draw your family. It does not have to be perfect. Mine is not perfect either, but it makes me happy. The alien commander looked around the small apartment. Through the window, he could see his warships waiting in the sky. His soldiers were positioned around the city, ready to begin the destruction. Sub-Commander Kixmalar was probably wondering why he was taking so long, but all of that seemed very far away now. In this moment, there was only a small human child who had trusted him with something precious, a child who believed that even a terrifying alien warrior could create something beautiful. Slowly, carefully, Vexithara knelt down on the floor. His massive frame looked ridiculous next to the tiny furniture and scattered toys, but Jiho clapped his hands together with delight. Perfect. Now we can both draw. Vexithara placed the red crayon on the blank paper. His hand shook slightly as he tried to remember how to make art instead of war. It had been so many years since he had created anything instead of destroying it. As he began to draw his first uncertain line, he felt something he had forgotten existed. Peace. For the first time in centuries, Commander Vexithara was not thinking about battle or conquest. He was just a person sitting on the floor with a friend, sharing crayons and memories of family. Outside, his communication device buzzed with an urgent message from Sub-Commander Kixmalar. But Vexithara did not answer. He was too busy learning how to hope again. Commander Vexithara spent the night in the small apartment with Han Jiho. They sat on the floor drawing pictures until the boy fell asleep, curled up next to his coloring books. The alien commander watched the child sleep peacefully, still holding a blue crayon in his tiny fist. As the sun rose over Busan, Vexithara's communication device buzzed again. Sub-Commander Kixmalar's voice crackled through the speaker. Commander, the High Council is demanding a status report. When do we begin? The bombardment? Vexithara looked at the sleeping child, then at the crude drawing he had made the night before. It showed stick figures holding hands under a purple sky. He barely remembered his birth siblings, but somehow his hands had drawn them anyway. Delay. The attack, he said quietly into the device. I need more time to study the humans. Sir, we have studied them for 5 years. What more is there to learn? Everything, Vexithara replied. I was wrong about them. We were all wrong. He left the apartment quietly, careful not to wake Jiho. Outside, the empty streets of Busan looked different in the morning light. Instead of seeing targets for destruction, Vexithara found himself noticing small details. Gardens where humans had grown flowers. Playgrounds where children had laughed and played. Bus stops where people had waited together each morning. As he walked through the city, he began to see signs that not all humans had fled. Smoke was rising from a chimney several blocks away. He could hear voices coming from a large building, with a red cross painted on its side. Vexithara approached the building carefully. Through the windows, he could see people moving around inside. He pressed himself against the wall and listened. Dr. An, we need to evacuate now. A man's voice said urgently. The alien ships could attack at any moment. I am not leaving, replied a woman's voice. It was firm and determined. These children are too sick to be moved. Someone has to stay with them. Vexithara peered through the window. Inside was a medical facility. A woman in white clothes was checking on young patients in small beds. She had short black hair and kind eyes. This must be Dr. An Hiran. But doctor, the man continued, if you stay here, you will die when they attack. Dr. An looked up from the child she was examining. Then I will die doing my job. These children need me. I became a doctor to help people, not to run away when they need me most. The alien commander watched as she moved from bed to bed, checking each young patient. She spoke softly to them, making them smile even though they were afraid. Some of the children were very sick, but she treated each one with the same gentle care. Vexithara had been told that humans were selfish, that they only cared about themselves. But this woman was choosing to stay with sick children even though it might cost her life. He moved away from the hospital and continued walking through the city. Near the waterfront, he heard the sound of sirens and shouting. A building was on fire and thick black smoke poured from its windows. A man in a heavy coat and helmet was running toward the burning building. Other people were running away from it, but this man was running toward the danger. "There are still people inside," the man shouted to his teammates. This was Choi Wanho, a firefighter who had stayed behind when most of the city evacuated. "Wanho, it is too dangerous," another firefighter called out. "The building could collapse at any moment." "Then we better hurry," Choi Wanho replied, putting on his breathing mask and disappearing into the smoke. Vexithara watched from the shadows as the brave firefighter went into the burning building again and again. Each time he came out carrying someone who had been trapped inside, an old man who could not walk, a woman who had been too scared to leave, a family with 2 small children. By the time the fire was out, Choi Wanho had saved 8 people. His face was black with soot and he was coughing from the smoke, but he was smiling because everyone was safe. The alien commander continued his exploration of the city. Everywhere he looked, he found examples of humans helping each other. In a school that had been turned into an evacuation shelter, he saw a teacher named Yang Mirai organizing activities for frightened children. She was teaching them songs and games to keep their minds off the danger above. "Miss Yang," one little girl asked, "are the aliens really going to hurt us?" Yang Mirai knelt down so she was at the child's eye level. "I do not know what will happen," she said honestly. "But I do know that we are all together. And when people are together, they can be very brave." She led the children in singing a happy song about friendship and hope. Their young voices echoed through the shelter, pushing away some of the fear and darkness. As the day went on, Vexithara saw more and more examples of human goodness. People sharing their food with strangers, families taking in children who had been separated from their parents, doctors and nurses working without rest to help the injured and sick. But it was his return to apartment 304 that affected him the most. Hanjiho was awake now, sitting in the same spot where Vexithara had left him. The boy looked up with a bright smile when the alien commander entered. "You came back?" Jiho said happily. "I was hoping you would. I have been working on a new picture." He held up his coloring book. The new drawing showed 2 figures sitting together on the floor. One was small and human-shaped. The other was much larger with 4 arms. Between them were scattered crayons and pictures. "This is us from yesterday," Jiho explained. "I wanted to remember our time together. You are my first alien friend." Vexithara felt something break inside his chest. This child had been alone and afraid, but instead of being angry or sad, he had spent his time creating art that celebrated their friendship. "Jiho," the commander said slowly, "are you not angry that your family left you behind?" The boy shook his head. "They did not leave me behind. They had to help other people. That is what good people do. They help others even when it is hard for them. But you are alone and scared." "I am not alone," Jiho said, pointing at his drawing. "I have you, and I am not really scared because I know my mama and papa will come back. They promised they would, and promises are very important." Vexithara sat down next to the child. "What if they cannot come back? What if something bad happens?" Jiho was quiet for a moment, thinking seriously about the question. "Then I will be sad," he said finally. "But I will still love them, and I will try to be brave like they taught me to be. That is what family means. Even when we are apart, we carry each other in our hearts." The alien commander looked at the red crayon that Jiho had given him. It was still in his hand from the night before. Such a simple thing. But it had opened his eyes to truths he had never seen before. His communication device buzzed again. This time, it was a direct message from the High Council. Commander Vexithera, you will begin the bombardment within the next 6 hours or you will be executed for treason. There will be no further delays. Vexithera looked at the message, then at the child who was quietly coloring beside him. In 6 hours, he would have to choose between following his orders and protecting the most remarkable species he had ever encountered. The humans were not the monsters he had been told they were. They were something far more dangerous to the Dominion's way of thinking. They were hope made real. Commander Vexithara stood on the bridge of his flagship. Below him, the blue planet Earth turned slowly in space. Above him, 200 warships waited for his command. Each ship had enough firepower to destroy a mountain. Together, they could turn the entire planet into burning ash. The bridge was filled with his officers. Sub-Commander Kixmalar stood at his right side. Navigation Officer Zektalar worked at the weapons console. Communications Officer Yelmiran monitored signals from the High Council. Commander, Kixmalar said quietly, the High Council's deadline is in 30 minutes. All ships report ready for bombardment. Vexithara said nothing. In his hand, he held the small red crayon that Hanjiho had given him. It looked so tiny compared to all the massive weapons around him. But somehow, it felt more powerful than anything else on the ship. Sir, Navigation Officer Zektalar called out, we have the targeting coordinates for all major human cities: Seoul, Tokyo, New York, London, Moscow. We can destroy them all within the first hour. How many humans live in those cities? Vexithara asked. Approximately 1,700,000,000, came the reply. 1,700,000,000. Each number represented someone like Hanjiho, someone with a family, someone who laughed and cried and hoped for tomorrow, someone who might offer a crayon to a stranger. Commander, Communications Officer Yelmiran announced, incoming transmission from the High Council. The large screen at the front of the bridge flickered to life. The cold face of Council Leader Morthek appeared. His dark eyes showed no mercy. Commander Vexithara, Morthek spoke. You have 15 minutes to begin the bombardment. Explain your delay. Vexithara looked at the screen, then at the crayon in his hand. Council Leader, I have been studying the humans more closely. I believe our information about them may be incomplete. Incomplete how? They are not the violent savages we thought they were. I have observed acts of incredible courage and kindness. They risk their lives to save strangers. They care for their sick and weak. They choose hope even when facing death. Morthek's expression grew darker. Sentimentality, Commander. You have spent too much time among them. They have infected you with their weakness. It is not weakness, Vexithara replied firmly. It is strength, a strength we do not understand. Enough, Morthek snapped. You have your orders. Destroy the planet now, or we will execute you for treason and send another commander to finish the job. The transmission ended. The bridge was silent except for the quiet humming of the ship's engines. Sub-Commander Kixmalar stepped closer. Commander, what are your orders? Vexithara closed his eyes and remembered the past 2 days. He saw Dr. Anhierin staying with sick children. He saw Choi Wonho running into burning buildings to save strangers. He saw Yang Mirai singing with frightened children to give them hope. Most of all, he saw Hanjiho's trusting smile as the boy offered to share his crayons with a terrifying alien warrior. Sir? Kixmalar asked again. Vexithara opened his eyes and looked around the bridge at his officers. These were good soldiers who had followed him for many years. They trusted him to make the right choice. I cannot do it, he said quietly. Sir? Cannot destroy this planet. His voice grew stronger. I will not murder children who offer friendship to strangers. I will not kill people who risk everything to help others. I will not destroy the most remarkable species I have ever encountered. The bridge erupted in shocked voices. Officers looked at each other in confusion and fear. Commander, Sub-Commander Kixmalar said urgently, if you disobey the High Council, they will execute all of us. Then we will face execution with honor, Vexithara replied. Better to die as people with souls than to live as monsters without them. He walked to the communications console and opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships. This is Commander Vexithara. We are withdrawing from Earth immediately. Set course for the outer rim of the solar system. Sir, Navigation Officer Zektalar called out in panic. The other ship commanders are asking for confirmation. They think there must be some mistake. No mistake, Vexithara said firmly. Tell them the mission has changed. We are no longer destroyers. Today we become protectors. On Earth, President Kim Dae-ho was in his command bunker when the impossible news arrived. Sir, General Park Min-soo announced with amazement, the alien fleet is withdrawing. All ships are moving away from Earth. What? President Kim could not believe what he was hearing. Are you certain? Dr. Lee Soo-jin looked up from her monitoring station. Confirmed, Mr. President. They are leaving our atmosphere. We are picking up no weapon signatures. It appears they are really leaving. Across the planet, people emerged from their hiding places to stare up at the sky. The dark alien ships that had blocked out the sun were moving away like retreating storm clouds. In the hospital in Busan, Dr. An Hyerin watched through the window as the ships departed. The sick children in her care began to smile for the first time in days. Firefighter Choi Won-ho stood on a rooftop still covered in soot from his rescue work. He raised his fist to the sky in victory. Teacher Yang Mirai gathered her students around her in the evacuation shelter. Children, she announced with tears of joy, we are safe. We can go home. In apartment 304, Han Ji-ho was still sitting on the floor with his coloring books when his parents burst through the door. Ji-ho! His mother Kim Yoon-bi cried, falling to her knees and pulling him into her arms. We came as soon as we heard the ships were leaving. His father Han Dong-min joined the embrace, tears streaming down his face. We thought we had lost you forever. I knew you would come back, Ji-ho said happily. You promised. And I made a new friend while I waited. He showed them his drawing of himself and the alien commander sharing crayons. He was very nice. He had 4 arms and glowing eyes, but he was sad because he missed his family. So I gave him a crayon to help him remember. Happy times. His parents looked at each other in amazement. Their brave little boy had somehow befriended one of the alien invaders. High above Earth, Commander Vexithara stood on his bridge and watched the blue planet grow smaller in the distance. In his hand, he still held the red crayon that had changed everything. Commander, Subcommander Kix Millar said quietly, what happens now? The High Council will send other fleets to finish what we could not do. Vexithara smiled for the first time in centuries. Then we will be here to stop them. This planet is under our protection now. But sir, we are only 200 ships. The Dominion has thousands. Numbers do not matter. Vexithara replied, thinking of a small boy who had shown no fear when facing a giant alien warrior. We have something more powerful than weapons. We have learned what the humans call hope. 6 months later, when the next Dominion fleet arrived to destroy Earth, they found Commander Vexithara and his ships waiting for them. The battle was fierce, but Vexithara's forces fought with a passion they had never known before. They were no longer fighting for conquest. They were fighting for family. And on Earth below, in a small apartment in Busan, Han Ji-ho added new pictures to his coloring book. Pictures of alien ships protecting his world. Pictures of different species working together. Pictures of hope made real among the stars. The red crayon had changed everything, and the galaxy would never be the same. Years later, when humans finally traveled to other worlds, they would find planets where former Dominion soldiers had learned to create instead of destroy. They would find species that had been inspired by the story of a small boy who offered friendship to his greatest enemy. And they would know that sometimes the most powerful weapon in the universe is a child's simple trust in the goodness of others. The promise had been broken, but a better promise had been made. Earth was safe, and the stars themselves had learned the meaning of hope.